This is
Wait,
Robert Martellacci, the Mindshare Learning Report, Canada's Learning and Technology e-magazine. And welcome to This Week in Canadian EdTech, very special edition for a sneak peek at our upcoming Canadian EdTech Summit. And joining me today is keynote speaker Alana Winnick, who is an award-winning education leader and both an author and host of the Generative Age podcast and book, and that explores the rapidly evolving world of generative artificial intelligence and its impact on education. Alana, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me again, second time.
Well, we're super excited to be hosting you in Toronto, of all places, this coming October 31st to November 2nd for our 15th Canadian EdTech Leadership Summit. And it's really about navigating the future of education in an AI-inspired world, because you just can't ignore it today.
No, you can't. We can't hide from it. I mean, we should have been talking about these things years ago, but now here we are, so there's no escaping it.
So talk to me about what excites you about the future of education and back to school. You're still with the school system in the New York City area. What's it been like for you so far?
Okay, so what excites me most? That's a two-part question. So I think for me, I learned how to play the game of school at a very young age, and I can stand here and say I have 3 degrees and 2 4.0s, and people could think I'm really smart, but like maybe I'm not, and maybe I just learned how to play the game of school, right? I've always thought that education needed to change and be more like the real world that we live in. Like, I live in New York City, I live in Manhattan. I'm surrounded by innovators, creators, entrepreneurs. I am very much in a creative world. And I feel like that's not what school looks like, but that's what the world looks like, right? And if our job is to really help students be successful in the world, we need to teach them these types of things. And now I think with the release of generative artificial intelligence, AI can produce the end product for us in seconds, whether it's an essay or audio, video, I mean, most end products. So we need to really rethink what and why we're asking our students to do certain tasks. And I think we always should have rethought education. I think the rest of the world has evolved and changed, and industries have changed, and education hasn't really changed. Like, when you were in school, it's pretty much probably the same as it is now, except instead of doing a paper worksheet, you're doing a skill and drill math website game that's the same exact thing, just a different version of what you did. And we never really evolved. So I think this is really forcing us to rethink and evolve. So that's what I'm most excited. Okay. And the school question, sorry.
Right.
So yeah, I'm the Educational Technology Director and Data Protection Officer of Peconico Hills Central School District in a little town you might have heard of called Sleepy Hollow, New York, like the legend. And we launched teacher use of AI 2 years ago, student use last year, and this year I really want to get in the hands of every single user. So I did just invest, and I never really publicly speak about what I purchased in my district, but we did just invest in a software that is, I call them AI with training wheels, because not everyone's ready to dive into a big LLM yet, and they need those
Certainly.
The AI with training wheels, like, I'm going to say a few of them, like
Sure.
a school AI or a magic school or something
Right.
along those lines. I think that's a great place to start, but I think we really need to teach how to use a real big LLM, because when they go home, they use Snapchat anyway, and there's My AI or Instagram, whatever they use. There's AI built into it, so they need to really learn how to use it ethically in the right way. So we're making sure all users use it this year.
Absolutely. And so it harkens to the question, what's holding us back? I was in New Jersey at an event, at an AI summit. I was in Toronto at an event focused on AI. And the number of school districts I heard, IT directors, were holding back, or educators said, we're waiting for the guidelines to come out. We're waiting for administration, because we don't have any guidelines. Or a large school district says, we're piloting. You started this journey 2 years ago. We're still at our infancy in Canada and in many school districts in the US and around the world. And I know UNESCO just had Digital Learning Week that they
Hmm.
with a big focus on AI, but we're still what's holding us back? We need to demystify. And I think I might change the theme of my summit to say demystifying,
Yeah.
because is tremendous value, but we're just being held back. And it harkens to when the internet started or when computers came on the scene. Or
Right.
one of the school directors said, this is such a game-changing tool that it compares to the printed book. And I have to stop and think about that,
Yeah.
because the printed book resulted in storytelling not being the same as it was. And we are redefining the future of education here in a very big way.
I actually wrote about that in my book. I called it a pressing revolution or something like that. The printing
Mm-hmm.
press.
Cool.
Yeah, because I think it's like a transcendental moment when knowledge dissemination is about to change. When the printing press was released, we knew in that moment that knowledge was going to be much more accessible and accessed differently than it had ever been before. And we know that that's happening. I think people just don't know exactly what that means, um, and what that looks like. So I think we're kind of exploring that right now. I think some people, like probably you can envision what that looks like, but for the average classroom teacher, they don't really understand. That's why I think as a leader, you need to help guide them. So that's why right when it was released, I publicly stood in front of my faculty and staff and said, I support you and I encourage you to use it. And here's ways you can use it. And I normalized it. Like anytime I would write an email and I used AI, at the bottom I'd say, in collaboration with artificial intelligence, because I wanted them to know that I'm using it and it's okay to use it. And then they're super confused because they're like, I don't understand how you use AI. It sounds just like you. And I think helping them realize ways that I was using it and modeling it, right? We're supposed to do that for our students. We're supposed to
Right.
model. So as a leader, you have to model for your teachers. And I think you just have to, um, model as a leader for your teachers. Teachers need to model for their students. But then you also have to take your innovators and your pioneers and allow them to flourish in a safe way and champion them and have them share their stories. Because when, a leader stands up there, they might not want to listen. But if it's one of their peers saying, look what I did with my students, or the students stand up and say, look at this project I did, or look how this helped me. I think it's a lot different when it's coming from their peers and showing real
Well
world
said.
examples.
Well said. And it's a great segue to your new book, or not so new book. It's a year
Yeah.
now. The Generative
Yeah.
Age, Artificial Intelligence and the Future of Education is making waves. And congratulations. I
Thank
first saw
you.
you present at Night Skate last
Yeah.
fall. I was so impressed. Hence, I asked you to speak
Yeah.
at our summit.
Thank
Can
you.
you share the key message you hope to convey to both ed leaders, educators, and parents and students? That it takes a village. It's the community. It's your stakeholder
Yeah.
group, if I can use that jargon. Talk to me about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I think, like I said before, I've always felt like education needed change. I was very excited in some ways during the pandemic, not that there was a global pandemic, but that I thought education was going to change. And it didn't really change in the way that I had hoped. And I think this really is the real catalyst for change. I think it's really helping us rethink teaching, rethink learning, and rethink assessment. And I hope that by the time someone gets to the end of my book, they are rethinking the assignments that they're asking of their students, taking more traditional assignment. Like I'll give you an example, such as like um a book report or a biography, where you would have gone to the library, took out a book, read the book, and wrote a report. And maybe transform it into something like, some examples we've done in my district is we turn it into the perseverance pod, because we rethought what was the point of the biography unit. Oh, we wanted them to learn about the person, how they persevered through a challenging time. And rethinking the media, right? Like instead of students being consumers, turning them into creators of knowledge and creating content in a way that the world wants to receive it. Like I don't think the world wants. It's very, media heavy world that we're in, and helping them create media. Like, you said you had a son. Would you be super excited to read your son's biography report, or would you be a little bit more excited to listen to his episode of the Perseverance Pod? Probably the pod, right?
Absolutely. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I
And
have
we're on a
twin
podcast.
boys, by the way. Not just one. I have
Oh,
two.
sorry. Oh, I
I'm
didn't know
blessed
you had
with
twin
two.
boys.
Twin
My
boys.
mom was an identical twin. I didn't know we shared
Oh,
that.
cool. That
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
special.
Quite a yeah, you get it. Quite a special bond.
It is.
Yeah. And then another example would be, okay, you are writing a persuasive essay. Well, what's the point? To persuade someone to do something. So instead, we made them into TED Talks, and we invited the parents and the community in, and we had elementary schoolers do a TED Talk, and they had to pick something that they want to build, in quotes, build in the community and persuade the audience to buy into their idea. But it couldn't be something like a school or a fire department or a hospital or something. It needed to be something creative. And they need to persuade the audience to build it in the community. So they're still writing and they're still revising and you're rethinking, they're still persuading, like, what was the purpose of the assignment? And I hope that that's my message, is rethinking what and why we're asking our students to do things, and helping them do it in more authentic ways. That's
Um,
what I hope.
amazing insight. And we're going to shift gears a little bit
Yeah.
and touch on the leadership aspect of all of this. I know I look a lot younger than I am, but I was part of this seminal meeting at the Bear Point Lodge in Maine with then Governor Angus King, Dr. Seymour Papert, founder of Ask Jeeves, 40 brilliant minds, and me. I like to surround myself with smarter people.
Of course. Me too. Same.
I had one of the UK clients that RM, Research Machines, leading edge company, and we were envisioning the future education computer.
But you didn't think that there was going to be such thing as AI, did you?
Not at that time. This is early 2000s.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so Governor King shared some insight with us on how he transformed Maine into one of the lowest performing, poorest states in the country. He wanted to make education one of the highest priorities and help them pull out of this. He set up a media event, and the internet was just coming on the scene. It's about transformation. And he went to a school and he showed how he was interested in kids and teachers working and learning together online. And that was an amazing media event, right?
Yeah.
So we're talking about history repeating itself in a sense when it comes to digital transformation here. And
right.
what does it take? It takes demystifying. And I love in your book, you cite some great examples of school districts that held a superintendent symposium.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I love that case study. Talk to me about that.
Yeah.
And
So
where things have evolved.
In the book, I did have 4 case studies, and I showed 4 very different ways, because there's not just like a student learning. There's not a one size fits all model. Your community, your board, your teachers are all very different, and you know what works for you. One district waited a bit to get a lot of the community buy-in and the board buy-in before they released anything. And it took them over a year and a half to even do any professional development because they were really preparing for it. And another district, the one you're talking about, where my family lives in Chappaqua, they're very progressive, and they had a superintendent's conference day in March of, it was like a couple months after ChatGPT came out. It came out in the end of November, and then by March, they had a full-blown, you saw the agenda, a very robust conference day around it. And I think what you said, it's all about just opening up dialogue. And that's what I try to do in my own district, just have conversations. So even if I'm hosting a PD that's not about AI, I might do an icebreaker. I think my teacher's probably annoyed when I lead the PD because I know they're going to have to work. And they're not just going to get talked at, and they're going to have to be actively engaged. But I'll make them do like a cheesy icebreaker, like get up and find someone you don't normally work with and share one interesting way that you've used AI since our last session. And I have them rotate 2 or 3 times, come back together, and then share something interesting that they heard. And they're more likely to not say, I did this, but they'll say, oh, I heard someone tell me this, or this person told me this, and they're more likely to share. And I think just getting the dialogue going and having the conversation normalizes it. I think that's really helpful. But something that you just said sparked something. I was just at the United Conference, which is the National elementary school and secondary school principal conference came together to make United. And one of their
Oh,
keynote
cool.
speakers was talking about, she was a journalist, and she was talking about one country she visited, how they called educators nation changers. And if you really think about that, and I was reflecting on the conference that you were telling me about that you went to many years ago.
Mhm.
If we want to change the future, the best way to really do that is to invest in education and invest in the children in school right now. And educators really are nation changers, right? We have the opportunity to change the future of the world that's about to graduate and enter the workforce. And my administrative team is reading The Anxious Generation right now. If you haven't checked that out, I highly
What
recommend it.
book is that?
The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. He's a
Okay.
professor at NYU. His previous
Mm,
book was called what did I just forget about it? I know I read that one too. Oh man, I can't
it'll come
forget.
back to
Whatever.
you.
Anyway, it's about like Gen Z and social media and smartphone usage and what that's really doing and impacting mental health and productivity and things like that. So it's something we're thinking about. But when you think about the current generation that's entering the workforce, I don't know if you've seen anything about the data behind the Gen Z employees. It's not positive. It's not like our generations. So we need to really rethink what's happening in school to make sure that
Right.
our future when we are in nursing homes or being taken care of by our children has the knowledge, tools, and skills that they need to
Well,
rule the
it's a
country and the world, right?
and it's a great point. It is about the skills agenda, and why are we not making? And so, C21 Canada, I'm co-founder and CEO of that not-for-profit, and we did a global scan on AI, and we released a report on the future of AI in K-12 in Canada, and developed some guiding principles. And when you talk about critical thinking, communication, collaboration,
Those are the most
digital,
important.
we need to make these kids resilient. And as a former hockey coach and still
Yeah.
play hockey 3 times a week, uh, mental toughness, right?
Yeah.
That was something we talked about. Now that term has been softened up a lot, but
Right.
mental toughness and getting through those tough times is absolutely essential. Now, why is the election this fall? Can't ignore it, and I'm not going to ignore that debate next week, because that's going to be the most watched debate in the history of debates, no doubt.
Yeah.
Why are they
Probably.
not making education an issue when you look at last week, that shooting at a high
I
school?
know. I
Like, come
know.
on,
It's
come
still
on.
happening. Why is
These
it
kids
still
need
happening?
education. These kids need to be better educated, informed, resilient, and mental toughness, overcoming those challenges and being able to identify, and self-regulation. Talk about
Oh, I remember the other
self-regulation.
book. It was called The Coddling of the American Mind. And that is
Oh
exactly
my
going to
God.
mental toughness because we're coddling this generation. Like
No,
we're protecting them so
we got
much.
to
And
stop
then,
it.
yeah, yeah.
You,
Because
you know, history repeats itself in good ways and bad. And AI is an incredible opportunity for us, but there are challenges with it. And
yeah,
let's perhaps delve into some of the challenges,
yeah,
because there are the resistors, and we're not at anywhere near the tipping point. If we want to look at the adoption curve of technology, we very much here are the early adopter phase. And we know what that cycle looks like before it crosses the chasm into widespread use. Talk to me about some of the challenges that we have before us in terms of equity, inclusion, and all
yeah.
those things.
I think that there will be a very, very different type of digital divide that we've ever seen. I think usually when we think of digital divide, we think of socioeconomic status, and it's
Hmm.
if you have a laptop or a smartphone, if you have internet, it's like um based on what you can monetarily afford. And that was always a digital divide that we thought of. And I think this type of digital divide is access to AI, because if you don't have access, you're at a major disadvantage than if you do, right? And that has nothing to do with socioeconomic status. You could live in a very affluent town, but you might not have the access or knowledge or skills to use AI effectively. And the reality is, in the real world, if you can use AI effectively, you're going to be a lot more efficient than someone that can't. So it's not that AI is going to replace jobs necessarily. Maybe it will, but it will create new ones, kind of like the toll
Hmm.
booth thing, when toll booths were a thing when I
Yeah.
was very young. And now people work for companies like Easy Pass, right? They have jobs, different kinds of jobs, right?
Right.
But it's not that the AI is going to take the jobs away. It's that if you can use it efficiently, you're going to be more efficient at your job. And the people that know how to use AI are going to be further along. But not even just that, they're going to have opportunities like before. If you could afford a tutor, you might have done better in school. If you could afford someone to help you write your college admissions essay, you might get into better colleges. Now we're leveling that playing field. So it's not about socioeconomic status. It's about access and knowledge to artificial intelligence. And there's two other big issues that I see. One of them is around bias and discrimination. I've been
Hmm.
speaking a lot about that
Right.
one. That's really concerning to me, because the AI is using all the existing data to train the models, and a lot of that data is very biased. And we
Right.
might not even realize that it is, right? So we might be, for example, looking at a person for that we think is the best applicant for a job. And it's going to look at the historical data of the people that have successfully held the jobs before. But the people that were hiring them were biased and maybe only picking white men. So now if a woman tries to apply to become a principal, but they're looking at historical data, well, historically, it was white men that were principals. So a woman may not, her resume may never even get to the top of that pile. So that's just one example. I mean, I have a laundry list of examples, but there's a lot of bias in there, and the data, the AI is really making these data informed decisions based on biased data, which is concerning to me. And another one is all about misinformation. And so in my own district, there's different levels. There's people like I have 8-year-olds sit on national panels with me, talk about bias and discrimination. They talk about academic integrity and plagiarism. They're like 8. They started when they were 7, and now they're 8. So some of my teachers have been doing this for well over a year. Some of my students can speak so eloquently on national, international
Amazing.
panels, but there
Amazing.
are some that are just, starting to scratch the surface of it, because, it's just about getting comfortable using it themselves. The misinformation piece is what I'm facing right now with some of my teachers. They're saying like, "Oh, this is a really great tool for the students to use for research." But we need to stop and think. You don't necessarily know where the AI is getting the information from.
Right.
Some models tell us, other ones don't. How are we just going to trust whatever the AI says? Do we know if it's credible? Do we know where it's getting its information? Should we be backing it up with a reliable resource? And I think now more than ever, we need to trust certain sources and journalists and websites and journals, and know that they're giving us accurate information and they're not using AI generated content, or they're using their human intelligence to make sure that it's, check and balances kind of system. But I don't think we can just trust whatever AI tells us. And I think these are all skills that students need to be explicitly taught. And we need to, start with our human intelligence and end with our human intelligence. And I call it being a DJ and remixing, and making sure that everything you use is reflective of your own thoughts and your own ideas. And these are, again, just we need to explicitly teach these things. So I guess my big things are digital divide, bias discrimination, and misinformation and hallucinations.
Great analogy and great insight. So, in the interest of time, because it
Yeah.
is a Saturday, and there's the
Yeah.
the immersive learning environment that
Oh,
you're
I'm
going to be
so
speaking
excited.
in
Yeah.
the round in a brand new facility at the University of Toronto. We are actually going to have the architect that Sebra from Netherlands come and speak about design thinking and
Wow.
immersive learning. Yeah. So, in the interest of time, I want to ask you one more question
Yeah.
around what excites you about coming to speak at our Canadian EdTech Summit and coming across the pond, the border,
Yeah.
and why should leaders, teachers, industry folks, stakeholders, parents, students come to this summit?
Okay, number one, well, this is not why I'm excited to come, but it's my first time speaking technically internationally over the international border.
Wow.
So, yeah, so that'll be really exciting. But that's not why I'm excited to come because it's really very close to me. It doesn't feel like another country. I'm excited to come because I think we are so geographically close to you. I think that our mission and vision align. You had come to, I sit on the board of NiceGate, which, if you're not familiar, is like the New York version of ISTE, and you had come to our conference, so I'm excited to come to yours
Right.
and
And I must
see how
say,
we
could
can.
I say that it is a must-do conference for any Canadian EdTech looking to go into the US? It's directly across the border, and
Yeah,
it
it's
is
very
one of the
close.
best events. I love going, and they put it up on par with ISTE and FETC.
Yeah,
You want to
yeah,
win your backyard. It's important to win your backyard. If you're not
yeah.
winning, if you're not successful in your own backyard or nearby, then you're not doing things properly, in my
Right.
estimation.
Yeah,
But
yeah, for sure. But I think you're right. So I love ISTE. I've never actually been to FETC
mhm,
because I've always had to, pick and choose because I am still a practitioner. I still
right.
do work, and
And
it's
that's what I
really,
love about you. You
yeah,
are boots on the ground,
yeah,
reality. You're not just talking,
yeah. I'm walking the walk and talking the
20,000
talk.
feet,
Yeah,
right? Exactly.
yeah,
You
yeah.
can land a plane and fly it.
For sure,
How's that
yeah.
analogy?
Yeah, no, that's great. I love it. Yeah, so I loved Nice Skin, I fell in love with it, and I started getting more involved because I feel like I love ISTE, but it's so big, and I might know you and never see you.
Hmm.
At Nice Gate, you kinda can't miss anyone. It's such a small family community type feeling. So I've gotten to know so many people throughout the years. We welcome to everyone. So Canadians, please come join us. And so yeah, we hosted you. So I'm excited to come check out your conference, and I want to see how we could collaborate more together and support each other because we are so close, and it's a very big world out there, and you need to collaborate with the people that are around the world, see a global perspective. But when you can welcome your neighbors, I think it's great. So I'm excited.
And I presume you'll unpack your book a little more.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
And on that note, we're going to give a book away. So
Thank you.
the first person that likes this podcast,
Ooh,
and the second person that reshares it are going to get a complimentary book courtesy of
thank you.
Mindshare.
Thanks.
We, we want to help the cause. We want to help you for your retirement savings, Alana. So
Yeah.
you've got a long way to go.
Yeah.
Grateful for your time today. Grateful for the incredible work that you do, and looking so forward to hosting you at our 15th Canadian EdTech Summit, October 31st and November 2nd in Toronto at the University of Toronto. Be sure to check out Mindshare Learning to learn more and to register for the summit. And be sure to check out Alana Winnick's website and follow her on social media at Alana Winnick. And
.com. Yeah.
where could they buy your book?
Um, it's on Amazon, it's on Barnes and Noble, so any of those websites. It's called The Generative Age. I also have a podcast too, so if you like listening to
Yes, I
podcasts,
love
it's
listening to your
ca
podcast.
yeah, it's called The Generative Age, just like my book. Both are called The Generative Age. Oh, also, I forgot to tell you, I took your favorite panel from ISTE and I posted it as a podcast episode, so it's on YouTube and every podcast platform. So,
I'm
yeah,
going to
that's
share that in our next issue of the Mindshare
yeah.
Report.
Yeah, that was
And
so good. Not because of me, because of all that was amazing. And I'm not taking credit for it. Those voices it was one of my favorite things I've ever
you
hosted in my
surround
life.
yourself with some incredible people. I'm
Thank
just
you.
so
Yeah,
honored to be part of that community.
thank you.
And how's the book doing so far?
It's going well. I think I guess I'm up and coming in this space, so other authors that published are more well-known than I am. So it's going well. I never really wanted or aspired or dreamt to be an author. So this is something that's just happened on my journey. I think my best advice to anyone that's listening is just be open-minded to anything that comes your way. I never want to be a podcaster. I never want to be an author. I never thought I'd be a public speaker. It's not that I wasn't opposed to it, but if an opportunity presents itself, just be open, try it. The worst thing that you could do is say, it's not for me and you don't have to do it, but just take the journey as it comes and be open-minded. So that's how I became an author. I didn't aspire to do it, but here I am.
So well said. And you
Yeah.
embrace the growth mindset. You are the
Yeah.
poster child for the growth mindset. George
Thanks.
Couros would be so proud of you
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
And me for saying that word. And that's one of his books, or Innovator's Mindset. He
Yeah.
uses that
Yeah.
brand. But the first 50 people who register or have registered for this summit, haven't looked at the numbers lately, will get a complimentary book of yours on
Wow.
generative AI.
Thank
How's
you.
that?
Wow. I love that. Thank
With
you.
that, I hope I've put you over the top to be a bestseller. Thank you again,
Oh,
Alana Winnick, award-winning educator, author. My name is Robert Martellacci, the Mindshare Learning Report. Be sure to check out www.mindshare Learning to get your latest issue of the Mindshare Report. And until next time, stay healthy, stay safe, and keep the learning curve steep.